Welcome back to Three Men and a Mystery. I'm one of the three men, John Lorden.
And I'm Mike Morford.
And I'm Gray Hughes.
On today's episode, we're going to discuss information that came out during Coley McCraney's bond hearing, and we're going to discuss what is the grand jury's big decision regarding this case. But before we get to all that, I just wanted to put a question to you guys. Do you think that Coley McCraney should have a bail amount set? Morph, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think the charges are so very serious, and there is the DNA that they have that links him to the case one way or another. I think it's too much to take a risk on granting him bail. That being said, to me, if he was ever going to take off and run, if he was ever a risk, that would have happened when he voluntarily gave his DNA while he was waiting for the results to come back. If he thought he was going to get in trouble for this, I think he would have run at that time. So I doubt he has the means or would run, but I understand why they wouldn't grant him bond.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you that he had a chance to run when he thought they were zeroing in on him. That's honestly one of the reasons why I'm having trouble coming to a firm conclusion that he's actually the guy we're looking for. You know, you have police coming to you, and we're going to find out much more information about how that interaction all went down from his wife, who takes the stand during this bond hearing. But to your point, he had plenty of opportunity to get out. He stayed in the area, you know, for all these years. A lot of questions about that for me. And I just keep thinking about the possibility, and I'm not saying that this is what we have going on in this case specifically, but bail is there because you're innocent until proven guilty. And is this a case where the evidence that's being presented is so conclusive that they can just say, no, we don't want to risk giving him a bail amount because he might be a flight risk or something along those lines. And I'm struggling with that part of it because, yes, I know we have a DNA component to this, but as I've said many times before, the DNA is not tied specifically to the act of the murder. It's not DNA that's found on the murder weapon or something along those lines. So that's really a tricky balance that I'm feeling with all this. And you know, these are very serious charges. This is obviously a horrible crime. I'm feeling like there might have been another possibility where maybe you do set a bail amount, but maybe you make it, you know, $5 million or something along those lines. Just some possibility. But I don't know. What do you think, Ray?
Well, the DNA has always been what I've considered to be the biggest piece of evidence that we were always looking for. Whose DNA was that? So yeah, it seems like that they've got their guy, and maybe it would be too big of a risk to let him out. However, it seems like they don't really have all of these pieces put together yet that would really make a great argument. I haven't seen that anyways in all of the different hearings that they've had. Now, if they do grant him bail or like let him out on bail, I don't know what the bail amount would be, but he should wear a monitor, like an ankle bracelet. Great idea.
Yeah, great idea. Even maybe putting him under some house arrest conditions or something like that while the trial is progressing. Yeah, very interesting. I didn't think about that. All right, so let's get to the information. Before we get into this, I want to give a very big thank you to WTVY and WDHN. They are both local news sources that were sitting in the hearing and tweeting. That's kind of the best option that we've got for these hearings because they haven't been allowing cameras into them. So let's crack into the tweets from WTVY and WDHN. Bond hearing for Coley McCraney about to begin at Dale County Courthouse. First witness is Ozark Police Chief Marlos Walker. Judge tells families of Tracie Hawlett and J.B. Beasley, the teens McCraney is charged with killing, may be called to testify. Very unusual in bond hearings. So here we're hearing that family members might be called to testify, and actually we are going to see that that does occur in this hearing. Walker, there were 5 possible relations to the DNA examined by Parabon Nanolabs. So now we're getting some clarification on the list. We know that he was provided a list of names to essentially look through. And it sounds like that list, we're looking at 5 names that he was given. Chief Walker said he and McCraney were classmates in high school. Walker says McCraney was chosen from the possible relations because I recognized the name. Not surprised by any of this, right, guys? I mean, except that the list was so small. I kind of expected it to be like 20 names or something like that, but it's only 5. Are you guys surprised by any of this yet?
I'm not surprised by it. It's a small town, so the chances of them knowing each other are going to be stronger. And there's been cases like the April Tinsley case that was narrowed down to 2 brothers. So 5 names compared to that case seems like a lot of names versus, a set of brothers, for example.
Yeah.
And then Walker, knowing him, probably just said, well, let's check him out first.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got an old relationship with this guy. This is kind of an easy in on this. Walker says he did not know McCraney as an aggressive person during their high school years. He says he did not doubt the possibility of McCraney being responsible for Tracie Hawlett and J.B. Beasley's deaths once the DNA came in. So that's kind of an interesting contradiction almost. We have him saying, in one statement, yeah, I knew McCraney and I never knew him to be an aggressive person. But as soon as he sees the DNA come in, he's saying, I have no doubt that there's a possibility that he's the one that actually did this.
But that's even a contradiction in itself. I have no doubt that there's the possibility.
Right.
Okay, so possibility is sort of not really that strong of a statement, but then right before that you said no doubt.
Yeah. And you have to wonder, I did some stuff back in high school, like with mock trial and them preparing you for being on the stand. And sometimes they will practice very specific statements with you to try to kind of tip things one way or the other. So,
I mean, it's sort of like saying, hey, there's no doubt that there's a possibility that you will win the lottery tomorrow.
Right.
I see. Yeah. I mean, right. There's no doubt that the possibility exists.
Yeah. It's strong language on a bit of a weak statement. I get you.
Exactly.
Defense questioning Walker about his statement that DNA doesn't lie, then brought up recent arrest of a woman on charges that she forged lab tests. So I did a little research here to figure out what this was about. This is about a woman named Brandy Murrah, per the SpringfieldNewsSun.com. She's the owner of a lab that conducts paternity tests and drug screenings for at least one Alabama county, and she's been charged with falsifying the results of some of those tests, presenting authorities with a potential wave of consequences in family court cases. The allegations against Brandy Murrah, 36, of Clopton first surfaced on May 2nd when Ozark Police Chief Marlos Walker said his office received word that drug tests and paternity results were being altered by her lab. Kind of a scary thing to happen in your police department, right? And we've already had so much talk around the possibility of corruption in this area when it comes to the case of JB and Tracie, and in particular, some things that are related to the possibility of drugs or, moving drugs, buying and selling drugs related to this. And now we're hearing that a lab is faking drug test results.
But what connection did Brandy Murrah have with the DNA collected from Coley McCraney?
Exactly. Well, I think they're just trying to show a possibility. Remember, right. This is the defense's position isn't that they have to prove anything necessarily, except that they have to open up the possibility that something else might be happening. So I think that that's them just putting some legs into the argument of, you guys have DNA test results, but hey, we've heard of test results before that we can't really trust. You're going to see there's an interesting twist that happens with this line of conversation, though. Prosecution states there is no relation between McCraney and Brandy Murrah. Defense admits the lack of relation. Judge Stanley Garner just told prosecutors and defense attorney to shut up and sit down as they argued over relevancy of Brandy Murrah's arrest. There is no connection between her arrest and McCraney. Judge just stopped that line of questioning because it is irrelevant. So kind of to your point, Gray.
I guess I could have just waited 30 seconds and seen that.
No, that's all right.
Pretty funny.
Make all the predictions. You're pretty good at some of these predictions. So prosecution is mentioning the DNA sample from the crime scene. It apparently ran against 17 million DNA profiles. Does that sound like, are they just talking about the CODA system?
I think they'd have to be because they wouldn't have access to anything like Ancestry.com or 23andMe.
Right.
GEDmatch only had at that time 1 million or so profiles. So I think they have to be counting any kind of national databases that are out there.
Yeah, that's the only thing that comes to mind. And the thing to keep in mind about that is that would be 17 million DNA profiles essentially of criminals. And we know that Koli did not really have a criminal record at this point.
This is just an aside right here, but it'd be interesting. Maybe law enforcement should be uploading all 17 million of those into their own sort of GED match type site, right? And then you would already start with 17 million people.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to tie that to the genealogy process. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting aspect. I'd like to see if they do that, particularly with the changes that we heard, happening with GEDmatch now.
And I think they will. And I think in a way they essentially run matches against, CODIS before they even do the genetic genealogy.
Yeah, but from what I understand, the matches that they're going to do in CODIS are looking for a perfect match, right? Mm-hmm. Like a 1-to-1 essentially. Mm-hmm. So it would be interesting to see if they move towards doing genealogy type matches, looking for family members at this point and then drilling in to their suspect list from that.
I think it's a brilliant idea, and I think there'd be a lot of people that would actually contribute to it besides criminals. I think there'd be a lot of people that would volunteer their profiles to that database.
Yeah. And not only that, is the criminals, there's a genetic component a lot of times to criminals. So you might have family members and cousins that would easily show up in a genealogy research if you collected these 17 million and created your own GED match-like system.
I just did an episode of Crime After Crime with Danielle Hallen, and we touched on this. We were focusing on, the episode's called Disorderly Dads, but I ran into the story of the Bogle family, and this is a family that has 60 members that have been arrested over 4 generations. And I also found out that there are some stats out there that estimate that, I believe it's 5% of families are responsible for half of the crime in the world. And in the U.S. specifically, 10% of families are responsible for like 2/3 of the crime in the U.S.
Wow.
So certainly a genetic component, and using some genealogy on that database, I definitely think that would be a strong move. I'd be very surprised if we don't see some movement towards that. They asked Walker about the DNA sample. He says he doesn't know who took the original DNA sample. Judge is mentioning that the girls' bodies were taken to the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences where the DNA was found. This was brought up at the preliminary hearing. Walker knew the department took the DNA, just not who specifically did the analysis. Chief Walker said police have no eyewitnesses nor murder weapon. Case is mostly based on DNA, though McCraney did live in the area where the murders occurred. Prosecution has no questions for Walker. Coley McCraney's son, Desmond, now on the stand. He is a student at Troy University and Dothan High graduate. Desmond, who is 18, said he's never seen his dad drunk or using illegal drugs. He said his father disciplined him only once when he got in trouble while attending 3rd grade. Desmond said he doesn't believe his dad is guilty. And that's about it. Man, just to think of, putting an 18-year-old on the stand on something like this, really, really tough. And especially knowing that, his dad's future hangs in the balance.
But that is sort of a typical response. I mean, a lot of, even serial killers out there, they have family members that are so shocked when it turns out that it's their father who always treated them well, and he just seemed so normal.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's hard to, I know that it feels really bad. An 18-year-old, he's just starting his life. Now he has to get up on the stand, and then people at school know that he's the son, and it's just a really difficult situation.
Yeah.
But it's hard to base anything off of what maybe his family observed, to be honest with you.
Yeah. A lot of times these family members of these guys, if they're found guilty, they're victims too, and they've got to deal with this in their own way.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And we have to counterbalance that with, it's terrible to be the families of JB and Tracie that are waiting 20 years for this, and now they're having to see things go this way and bring out all this information again. at probably far more detail than they've even heard it before. So yeah, this is just a really bad situation on many fronts when it comes to the families of everyone that's involved. Speaking of which, Jeanette McCraney, Koli's wife, now on the stand. They have been married 19 years. She said he doesn't drink or do anything like that. Jeanette McCraney said Chief Walker called and asked Koli to come in and look at a family tree. McCraney went to police voluntarily. Jeanette testifies Koli and Chief Walker made lots of small talk, and Koli never considered himself a suspect. They also discussed murders, and McCraney offered to help in the case if he could, Jeanette testified. Testimony from Jeanette is that McCraney called Walker more than Walker called McCraney, trying to help with the case. Jeanette said her husband is innocent and believes bond should be set. That is highly unlikely given the seriousness of the charges. Are you guys surprised to hear her assessment that McCraney's actually reaching out to Walker more than Walker getting in touch with him?
It's a little bit surprising. On the other hand, if he somehow started to feel, hey, maybe they suspect me, I think if I was in his shoes, I'd want to know what's going on too. So you wonder what the interaction was there and what he was feeling, what he was thinking at the time.
A lot of times people that try to help too much become a suspect to the police because they're wondering why this person is so interested now.
Yeah, certainly saw that on the Madeleine McCann case with Murat. And yeah, we've seen it time and time again. But there's also the possibility that you have someone that is related to the case and, now he's seeing an opening and he's trying to interject himself so he can get closer to the information and understand more what they're looking at or what they're looking for. So Jeanette continues. She says that he has never used violence against her. She says that Koli was originally asked to look at a list of names. I would assume that that's that same list of 5 families that was given to Chief Walker. During this time, McCraney voluntarily gave his DNA to help with the cold case. Once again, we've kind of heard that aspect before, but it's in a bit of a different color now that we have Jeanette talking about he's trying to be so helpful. He's offered to do what he can. He looked at the list of names, volunteered his DNA, kept trying to call Walker. So there's definitely a picture that's being painted here. No warrant was involved at this time. Jeanette says they were told there was nothing to it. She's talking about the DNA test there. Once again, Koli said he'd do whatever he can to help with the case. And Jeanette says she gave her DNA as well at the time. That's the first time I've heard that. You guys think that was a typical move, or was that to just maybe try to de-escalate the situation, make it seem like they weren't focused on Koli?
Yeah, it's weird. As a police officer that's there collecting his DNA, I don't know why they would even take hers if her name's not on that list. It's kind of weird. It's weird that it would be offered up, or taken, in my opinion.
But just prior to that, you were saying that he was trying to be helpful, calling up all the time. Did he once mention during those phone calls that he had a relationship with J.B. Beasley? That's
a really good point.
And is he admitting now that is his DNA and he actually did have a relationship? And where was that information? So
that is one of the tough aspects of this case. And I was watching some old footage of Harrison talking, the defense attorney. And when he first kind of took this case on, he was making pretty public statements about, hey, all that the DNA proves is that they had a relationship. It doesn't prove that he's the person that actually murdered her. So it seems like even from him just getting started with this case, that he was realizing that is a good move for the defense, to essentially try to connect Koli to JB in a different relationship outside of this criminal act. But to date, we haven't heard that. And I thought that if they were going to bring up something like that, they probably would have tried it at the preliminary trial, to try to shuttle this whole process right off the bat. And we didn't see that happen.
It almost sounds like they don't think that's going to work, really. That's kind of a weak angle. And that's why they're trying to discredit that other case that you just mentioned a minute ago where they manufactured DNA evidence.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to have to try to attack the DNA if they don't think that the relationship angle is going to work out. And we do know that the police, the prosecution's side is bringing up the fact that he didn't mention that they had a relationship when he was actually being interrogated. So yeah, it's going to be curious to see how all that plays out. Jeanette McCraney says that they were free to just leave without giving a sample. So she's kind of making it seem like, once again, they were just trying to be helpful in providing the DNA. 2 to 3 weeks after the first meeting, McCraney was contacted to look at another list of names, Jeanette McCraney says. McCraney called 4 or 5 times to let Ozark PD know he was coming, but couldn't reach Walker. Jeanette McCraney says there are phone records to back up the story. I don't know about you guys, but I'm wondering if Chief Walker is essentially just buying time for the analysis at this point.
Yeah, having him come in to look at more, talk about different suspects. There are people that are on the list.
Keeping him on the chain a little bit with the relationship. And, hey, yeah, we need your help. Oh, we got more people for you to look at. I don't know how long it would have taken, because at this point we're talking about not Parabon's work. We're talking about the state lab's work that is taking this sample and then running it against the sample found on JB. So I don't know how long that process is, but here she's talking about 2 to 3 weeks before McCraney's contacted again with this story of, hey, we got another list of names for you.
I can't imagine it taking that long. I've seen instances where they'll get it and within 24 hours they can match it or say it doesn't match. So for that amount of time to go by, it's kind of weird. Then again, the entire process is kind of foreign to me as far as the way it was handled. It's the only case I know of where the person was given a heads up. I'm going to take your DNA. Is that okay? And will you look at this list of names? That has not happened in any of these other cases that have been solved using GEDmatch, because they don't want the suspect, the person of interest, to have any advance notice, to have any kind of inkling of what's going on. So it's a little bit foreign for me to have this list of names being shared with him. I just think it was handled incorrectly, in my opinion.
Yeah, but in terms of the time gap specifically, there could be other investigative steps that are going on here. I mean, we do know that when they get their warrants, they get his cell phones, they get his tablet. So there's other things that they're looking at, and maybe they were buying this time. Maybe they were talking to other friends of his at the time, trying to get some more information to kind of firm up the case before they really kind of, set the trap off. Jeanette McCraney says there was no sign that Coley McCraney would have been a flight risk. I think we can all agree with that based on what was going on around this and the time that's being taken. We're talking weeks that are passing after the DNA is being submitted. Jeanette said her husband missed her daughter's prom and graduation because he was locked up, and she pleads with the judge to set bond. She says that they were told that Koli was not in trouble and did not need a lawyer. Jeanette says that she got married to Koli in 2001, but they started dating in June of 1998. And she specifically says that she was living with Koli during August of 1999. I don't know. It's nice to finally have that piece. I kind of assumed that was what was going on back then, but we now have confirmation she's living with him. We know that something strange happens because they wind up moving. We have, the electricity and the water shut down at his house within weeks of this occurrence. I'd like to get a little more detail about what those living arrangements were, if they were at that place or if they were living somewhere else. Or maybe he had more than one place that he was keeping up through all this time. Who knows?
It'd be interesting to see if she had any kind of insight to the events of that night 20 years ago. Say, hey, he was with me. I remember this or that. But then again, I don't know how I would remember anything from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So unless it somehow stood out and she remembered those murders happening, and that helps her remember back then, it'll be interesting to see if she's on stand supporting him or giving him an alibi for the time of the murders.
Well, they do actually go into that. The next tweet is that Jeanette McCraney, on whether she knew of the case, everybody knew these girls were murdered. So I would assume that when you heard about that, and there's an initial shock that happens to you about, oh my God, this is our hometown. This happened right around the corner from where we live. I wonder where I was at that time. I'm pretty sure that she would have gone through kind of a mental process of where was I that night? What was going on that night? How close was I to this going on? Especially if they were living in that house on, I want to say Patterson. I'm not positive that I know it's in the Patterson area. You're talking about like less than half a mile from where the car was found. So I would really be, if I was going through this, I'd be keying into, oh my God, that was so close to my home. What was going on with this? What was happening that night? How close was I to almost being in that car, So I would imagine she's probably got some memories of what was going on at that time. But
also, you can't really rely on a spouse to really come forward and tell the truth on something like that. That's why they actually don't have to testify against their other spouse, when they're at trial.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But as if she can support a claim that he never left that night and he was home with her during the time of the murders, then they would want to put her on the stand, I would think.
Right. But I mean, to defend her husband, she might come up with an alibi for him too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the way it is. I hate, sometimes I'm a little skeptical like that, a cynic, but it's just, if that was your wife, you might find a way to think of where she was. Oh, she was with me because, I don't know. I would hope that I would be better than that and come forward and be truthful, but it's hard to know what you would do in that situation.
Yeah, I think even if you get that information out on the stand, you're going to have trouble with people actually buying it. You would have to have some type of, we were at the movies that night and I remember we saw this specifically and here's the receipt for it. I mean, you would really have to have some information to back it up rather than we were staying at home and we watched TV, State asked if he ever cheated on Jeanette McCraney. She said, no, my husband is a preacher. We just don't have a church at this time. And that was the last of her statements. They now call up J.B. Beasley's father, Hilton Beasley, to the stand.
And what will J.B.'s father add to all of this? We'll find out right after this quick break.
A lot of us struggle with finding happiness, dealing with tough personal issues, and so much more. But you don't have to struggle alone, and you don't even have to leave your home to get the help that you need, thanks to BetterHelp Online Counseling.
BetterHelp is available on desktop or mobile for both Android and iOS. You can speak to a counselor via text, chat, phone, or video.
Find secure, convenient, professional help that's affordable with BetterHelp.
BetterHelp isn't a crisis line, but you can find licensed professional counselors that you can speak to from the comfort of your own home.
3 Men and a Mystery listeners get 10% off your first month with discount code 3MEN. That's with the number 3. So why not get started today? Go to betterhelp.com/3men. Financial aid is available to those who qualify. Simply fill out a questionnaire to help them assess your needs and get matched with a counselor you'll love. That's betterhelp.com/3men. Find help to break through those personal obstacles with BetterHelp. Welcome back, and please keep in mind that our sponsors are helping us raise funds that will go towards investigating this and other cases further and honoring the lives of JB and Tracie. So please show them the same support that they're showing us. Okay, at this point, they call JB Beasley's father, Hilton Beasley, to the stand. Beasley just testified that he had independent investigators look at the case, and he doesn't believe McCraney is guilty. I just want to take a moment and let that settle in with everyone. So we have the victim's father taking the stand saying he doesn't think that that's the guy. What do you guys think of that?
That's powerful. That's you have to wonder what that's rooted in and how he feels that strongly to be of that opinion.
It feels like it's one of those situations where you've always believed something for all these years, and then when it turns out to not be that, you still stick with what you believed prior, like tunnel vision or
we deal with this all the time
yeah.
with the cases we look into in terms of the public's perception of specific cases. There's a lot of people that want to key every case back to a conspiracy theory or to other cases that they think are related, and it becomes a belief structure at that point. to your point about what you're saying here. So it could be that he has built up a belief structure over the years of looking into this case and having other people look into this case where he can't believe that it's something as simple as the type of crime that we're talking about at this point with Koli.
And we talked a little bit too previously, and I think before we started recording, but we're not getting the overall sense that the neighborhood is pounding their fist in that town saying, this is the guy, let's speed this along, let's get this guy the justice, the end that the families deserve, let's find him guilty. We're not getting this overwhelming sense from people that they're sold on him being guilty.
Yeah.
And your point, I think you brought up was maybe some of them have lived through the Johnny Barentine fiasco and they're sort of taking it slow. But definitely not that sense that this is the guy, let's get this trial going and get the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I do believe that. I think people that are really familiar with the case probably felt somewhat burned by what happened with the Johnny Barentine aspect of this story. And now maybe they're not so quick to rush into it, despite the fact that it looks like the prosecution and law enforcement are moving very, very quickly with everything. But yeah, let's see if we can learn some more about why he has these beliefs. They are now asking Beasley who he believes might have killed those girls. And there's an objection. Beasley said he has been told cartel may have killed his daughter. Beasley believes that McCraney should be given bond. He's testifying the cartel operates in southern states and General Noriega headed it. This is getting weird, was tweeted by the actual reporter that's sitting there.
Okay.
And once again, I just want to point out, especially when we're talking about something like, Manuel Noriega now becoming involved in some type of super theory here. This is something that we see time and time again. If you are in the social media space and you put out a video touching on a conspiracy theory, you will get people that have these beliefs that all these conspiracy theories tie together and they all roll up to one of like five, not even five, one of like three major theories. So here it kind of feels like that. And I'll tell you guys, I'm kind of concerned that the investigators that he was working with, because I've also seen this, especially with missing persons cases, some PIs are just looking to rack up that bill. And sometimes you'll hear about these kind of unbelievable aspects and they're going to go and try to research those unbelievable aspects because that's how they can charge more. So I don't know. I kind of have this bad feeling that maybe he's been taken advantage of in this case or something along those lines. I would love to ask him about this directly, to bring him on and to just kind of get a better understanding of this. It's interesting because some of the rumors we've heard were drug related, but I don't know that we could really be talking about, a cartel like that level.
Noriega.
Okay. Yeah.
But let me ask you this. Is it possible? See, this is what a lot of the conspiracy theory minded people, their question is it possible? And you have to say, well, yes, because it's 1 in a trillion, but it is something that's technically possible. And then once you say yes to something, then, oh, did you hear that? There was a yes. And then it becomes even more legitimate at that point. But it's like, I just want to say no. But then if you say no, you're not being technically correct.
I mean, for the conspiracy theories that we've heard about around this, one of them was that there was a tape, and I think they said that Tracie actually had the tape, but there was some tape that was going to be used in court and it was going to get some people in trouble for drug dealing of some kind, or, the level of believability for me personally on a story like that, much higher than this is some, cartel issue.
Right.
I don't know how he landed at this. I wish that we had better information because maybe he's got, he's got the legs to make this thing stand. I don't understand it from the very brief pieces that we have.
And again, I think we need to point out the invitation to the families of these girls is still out there. If anyone knows him and is willing to talk with him and invite him to come on, it's open for him to do that. We'd love to hear from him.
Yeah, we would love to understand this better. And if there is an aspect to this that needs to be investigated further, we would certainly want to understand that better. So if anyone knows Hilton, please extend the invitation from the three men. We're absolutely here and willing to listen.
Yeah, and his DNA on JB's body completely throws out his theory. Unless you can somehow tie Koli now to the cartel in some way. Maybe he was calling Noriega on the phone just the prior week.
To be fair,
I'm just saying.
We have in the rumor mill heard of a possibility that Koli had some type of drug dealing relations going on back at that time. Specifically rumor mill information. But that's a really good, that'd be a great question to actually ask Hilton. Then what is the DNA being found? How is that tying to Koli? It'd be super powerful if he took the stand and he said, oh, by the way, I know that she was dating someone. I didn't know who it was. Maybe it could be him, but we don't quite get that either. Here it sounds like his theory is starting to connect with some of the rumors that we have heard about previously. Now he's testifying that Ozark police may have been involved in killing, according to an Ozark police employee. And the next statement he mentions, Officer Crum said there was effects of the cartel in Ozark PD. So in case you guys don't remember, Officer Crum is Raina Crum. She is one of the names that came up on a blogging site that really ran hard with this theory that there was an officer that was involved with these murders, really pulled together a bunch of information about drugs being involved in all of this. I think even the aspect of the tape being used in court kind of wove into that as well. We were going to originally do a whole episode about this, but we just don't think it's very important now with the focus that the case has taken at this point. But that blog essentially got sued by Chief Spivey as well as several of the officers that were named. Raina was actually signed on that suit as well, so she was sued. And another officer that I believe had spoken up was also added to that lawsuit. There was a lot of public information that was available about that lawsuit being filed, and then it just fell completely off the map. There was no updates. None of the local news channels got back and actually reported what happened with it. I dug in to the legal records and found out that the blogger, and this was for a website called Henry County Report, the blogger essentially proved to the court that he was not able to defend himself financially, and he kind of gets removed from the suit. And at that point, the police officers and Chief Spivey all dropped their suit. So the suit got completely dropped ultimately. But we have seen this Raina Crum name come up before. And there's also a story, and once again, this is from that blog, so I really don't know how much stock we could put in this. But there was another story that Raina Crum had been silenced basically when she was attacked by another officer. Really interested in the fact that we don't have any charges or any repercussions that happened for something like that. I mean, if I remember right, it was like a baseball bat attack or something along those lines. So that's where I've seen that name, Officer Crum, before. Now continuing with Hilton Beasley, he says, days after the girls were found, the officer who reportedly found the car first left the force. His name was Dan Presswood. Before we were recording today, we were watching a video clip of the chief from Dothan, and that's not the name that he talked about in terms of the officer that found the car. So this is the first time I've heard about this officer. Do you guys have any insight on that?
I wonder if there were two people at the same time, if they're only mentioning one of them, or then again, we're talking 20 years ago. Is somebody giving information here and their memory is just not, recalling it properly?
Yeah, and we do also have kind of two police departments that are part of this. We got the Dothan PD with the missing persons report, and then we have Ozark PD finding the car. So it could be, depending on the perspective you're talking about, maybe it was the first officer from Dothan PD that had arrived on scene or something along those lines. But yeah, that's the first time I've heard that name. Beasley then continues, another man was believed to have killed the girls and went to Henry County. He can't remember the name, but said the man was an OPD officer. State has tried to say Beasley's opinion is irrelevant. Andrew Scarborough says otherwise, pointing out how the state puts the family of victims on the stand all the time. State says that opinions, regardless of the source, is irrelevant. Facts are relevant.
I wonder why he was allowed to, I know it's just a hearing, but putting out names and stuff like that with no evidence. I mean, another man was believed to have killed the girl and went to Henry County. Well, who believed that? Right? You're just saying believed, and we don't know who you're talking about, who believed that. And then you're putting other names up there, and it seems like you could actually be putting people in danger by putting their names out like that in reference to being the real killer. So I'm kind of surprised that they allowed that at the hearing.
Once again, this feels like a scattershot approach for the defense, that they're just trying to raise so many questions of different possibilities, and to have, a family member so significant to one of the victims get on the stand and say, I don't think it's Koli, and here's why. He's woven in several of the different rumors that we've basically heard all in this one shot. So we're talking about drug cartel. We're talking about crooked cops. It's really, there's a lot that's going on with this statement. So I would love, like I said, for there to be a much better dialogue where we could actually drive into the details of this stuff and understand it better, or help Hilton understand it better, one way or the other. I don't know who would come out of that conversation in terms of learning, but it just really seems to me that there's some aspects of this case that, I don't know. Either we're missing something big here, or he is. And I'm still of the mind that I am having trouble with what the prosecution has presented so far in terms of saying this is definitely, Koli that did this. I'm really, really struggling with the reasonable doubt aspect to all this. So it's weird because I almost feel like him and me kind of line up a little bit in terms of our sensibilities about what's going on in this case, but it's clear that he has very strong beliefs that are driving that. Mine are just based on, I'm looking at what's been presented, by the prosecution. Obviously he's going to have strong beliefs and very strong feelings because this is his family member that is a victim here. So
it'd be great to get more insight on the sources, whatever sources he's getting his information from that's leading him to believe some of these things. If we could explore that would be
great. I would really I'd hate to think that he was taking the information that was presented at the Henry County report website and having that really woven into his belief structure too strongly, because there was some things I saw there where I was like, this is fiction. Like, I'm sorry. I'm familiar enough with looking into reality and writing fiction that there was this whole, I don't even want to get into the details of it too much, but there was literally paragraphs, even pages of information where I'm like, this is not real. This is someone that sat down and thought what would be interesting for people. And I'm not saying that was the blogger that did that. I'm just saying he was presenting information that he wasn't fact checking very hard. Yeah, really, really tough. I feel for this guy so much, man. This is a father of a victim. I get it. I know that he wants the answers. I wouldn't, I don't know. It's heartbreaking.
It's a double taking moment when you hear that, because how often when a family member of a murder victim finally gets somebody in court, they've got that relief. They feel, hey, we've got somebody here. Let's see where this goes. And he's not going that way at all. It's something you don't see very often.
Yeah. I don't want Hilton to get to the other side of this. Koli gets convicted, and then he's like, oh my God, I went and sat on the stand and said, I thought this guy was innocent, and I brought up all these other stories. Like there's an emotional backlash that could happen at that end of it too. And that's why I think that this is, it's just, I don't know. I don't want to say it's risky, because obviously I think that he's raising an important point if that's really what he believes. I wonder about how good this is for him just at an emotional level based on the journey that they're about to take. Okay, so at that point, testimony is over. Defense attorney David Harrison now arguing for bond. Harrison mentions that the testimony of the police insults me. Harrison and co-counsel Andrew Scarborough also argued that McCraney led a stellar life before his arrest in March. A career truck driver and father of 6, McCraney has no convictions on his record. He lived in our local area all of his life except for a stint in the Air Force. Harrison is questioning the credibility of Paragon, and I am saying that intentionally that way, the company that matched DNA to McCraney. He hasn't mentioned that state labs later conducted independent tests. And that's a really important thing to point out. I really wish that our DNA episode was released before this trial happened, because there's some stuff in terms, you guys are going to see, this gets really wild here, talking about the DNA stuff, particularly from the defense's point of view. And I have to wonder, either do they really not know what they're talking about in regard to this, or is this like a strategy? Like, you'll see what I'm talking about as we continue here. Harrison, we don't have a weapon. We don't have a motive, only a referee that calls its own shots, Parabon Labs. And then the reporter that's tweeting even says, note it's Parabon, not Paragon. So I don't know if he messed that up originally or if he's correcting Harrison, but someone was getting Parabon's name wrong. Harrison then says, the snapshot phenotyping test used by Parabon Labs is new and not accepted by science community. Harrison continues, the phenotyping should fail because there is no peer review. He then says Parabon is using McCraney to market itself, calling into question whether they have a dog in the fight. So we just released our episode with the DNA expert interviews. We talked about snapshots specifically in that episode. That is not the product that was used in this case.
Right. That's just, phenotyping is just coming up with the eye color, skin color, freckles, where you might have lived, skin tone.
And at most a digital composite.
Yeah, that's it. That has nothing to do with this whatsoever. It's the genealogy research that they use.
It's like you're complaining about the chicken McNuggets at McDonald's, but you had a Big Mac. I don't get it. It's completely off.
Yes,
it's completely wrong.
Parabon has not used this case at all. I haven't seen him bringing it up like as advertising. So I don't know where he's coming up with that.
Very good point.
I think both sides, the prosecution and the defense, are going to have to school themselves on how this works and how this science works, because it's not junk science like the defense is claiming. It works. We know that it works. But I think to the prosecution's end, they're going to have a full understanding of it too, to understand what they're dealing with as they battle over this Parabon stuff. But I think after our last episode, I think listeners will definitely have a better understanding of what's going on. And I think for all of us that deal with this stuff so much on a regular basis, in so many of the cases we cover, we know that the science works here. This, I understand what he's saying about the snapshot product. I mean, we talked about that at length in the last episode, and I've had a pretty critical view of that product right from the start. So I get what he's saying there. It's just, it doesn't apply in this case. We're not talking about the snapshot phenotyping. And interestingly, I don't see, I don't know if the reporters don't understand this difference either. I don't see that the state corrects him. I don't see that at any point the prosecution comes back and says, you're talking about something that is not related to this case, right? Which would have been a really easy way to shut him down. So once again, I'm getting this feeling, and we've had this feeling at several points with this case, as Parabon came into the picture with it, that people are talking about this thing and not really understanding what it is. And that really scares me, because now we're talking about everyone's leaning on this as a DNA case, and you've got people that don't even know what product was actually used.
Are they allowed to object during these hearings? Like,
They made objections, I believe, when there was objections that I saw in there. I took most of them out. They didn't really say what the objections were for. They would just say objection. So
it seems like right there would have been a perfect time, right? Like, objection. They didn't use phenotyping.
This is like a closing argument type scenario. So okay. I think you can call objections, but I don't know if it typically happens. What should happen is they should address it in their argument after that and just say, by the way, you guys might want to check into that, because snapshot is not what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and if the prosecution missed that and didn't understand that either, then they've they've got some homework to do too, because to me, in my mind, the snapshot is almost an obsolete product.
Yeah.
With what we have now, obviously it's a lot more difficult since GEDmatch just changed their rules up a little bit, but what we have now supersedes it. Who cares what somebody may look like, or you don't have to worry about any of that, because now you're going to get a list of names and your suspect's going to be on this list of names most likely. And I don't fault the defense or the prosecution in this case for not fully understanding this, because it's their attorneys. Their job is to consult with experts and to get experts to bring them in. But in my opinion, both sides better get some experts involved here and help them understand this process.
Someone should have been elbowing someone else at one of those tables in that moment. And based off what I see here, it doesn't seem like that happened. So the state then starts responding. They say Parabon is not involved in the legal proceedings or evidence brought into the case aside from their test. The DNA profile from the 1999 sample was created by the Department of Forensic Science, not Parabon. So he's now talking about the fact that the match that is done with Koli's DNA swab specifically to JB, Parabon has nothing to do with. Parabon basically just gave them the direction to look in. They then had to confirm that direction by getting their own test done. And he's pointing that out, that was done by the Department of Forensic Science in Alabama. And he specifically says it, but here we go with this word again. The swab done in 1999 was matched with his profile, not the Parabon phenotype. So now we have phenotype popping up. The Parabon phenotype gave no specific suspect, just markers that matched family members. The suspect, McCraney, deposited his semen on 2 dead teenagers, says the state. Then Harrison corrects him. Semen was found on 1 girl, not 2. Harrison, speaking on the state's position on the DNA found on JB, quote, "If a black man has sex with a white girl, he's the killer." Emery, he's representing the state, said he never brought race into it. DA Kirk Adams said suggestions that Parabon fix the results is absurd. He said the cartel claim is beyond belief and insults our intelligence. Adams said that 17 million people were profiled over 18 years, and the only DNA match is McCraney's. He points out McCraney lived in Ozark, only blocks from where police found the girls' bodies. He also said killer shot Beasley and Hawlett with a 9mm pistol, and that McCraney had one. Adams is now reminding Judge that McCraney could be executed if convicted. I actually looked into this a little bit. Alabama does have an active capital punishment program. They've executed 24 people in the last decade, the most recent one being May 16th, 2019. At that point, the judge delayed his ruling on the request for bond. District Judge Stan Garner Jr. would wind up filing his ruling a few days later on Friday morning. In his ruling, Garner determined that consideration of bail would be premature. And this is a quote from him. "A trial on the merits of these cases has not yet taken place. In fact, the evidence against Coley McCraney has not yet even been presented to a grand jury. At this time, it is only for this court to determine whether the state of Alabama has produced clear and strong evidence that meets the criteria set forth by the Alabama Supreme Court for denial of bail in a capital case. Based on the evidence currently before it, this court concludes that the state has done so. It would not be appropriate for this court to comment further on a pending criminal case," Garner wrote in his ruling. So essentially, bail denied. But we have a very important development, and that is the grand jury, which is coming up on this. Before we get to that, I just wanted to ask you guys, what's the biggest surprise that you heard going through all these tweets here today?
For me, it had to be JB's father voicing his opinion that he's that confident that Koli is not the killer. It was a real eye opener.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big one where you just go, wow. I mean, it seems like he's always believed something, like I said earlier, and he's sticking to that even in the face of really strong new evidence. The other part is just the lack of knowledge about the tests that were done by the defense. I mean, we were just talking about that. That's astounding to me.
That's the one that gets me too. And I have to wonder, is it really that they don't know, or is this some type of angle? Is there some type of play going on here that they're counting on the other people in the room not knowing and the public not necessarily knowing the difference and presenting the information just to once again do a scattershot approach of making people question the validity of this type of technology?
And not correcting them on the method that was used, the snapshot. It makes you wonder if the prosecution wasn't aware of it and didn't know. So
yeah,
it's gonna be interesting to see when and if this gets to trial, what's going to happen as far as experts being consulted, and if anybody from Parabon has to come in to talk about how the process works and stuff. It'll be interesting to see how all that plays out.
Well, to find that out, first it has to get through a grand jury, and that meeting is set for June 6th, 2019. The three men are actually going to be together on that day. We are going to be at CrimeCon in New Orleans, and we decided we're going to inject a special segment right here, letting you guys know what happened with that grand jury decision. Well, the three men did get together at CrimeCon. The grand jury did meet. However, nothing was released at that time. News didn't come out until the following Monday, June 10th, 2019. This is from the Dothan Eagle. Defense attorney Andrew Scarborough and Dale County District Attorney Kirk Adams confirmed Monday a Dale County grand jury has indicted Coley McCraney on 5 counts of capital murder. You guys surprised by this at all, Gray?
Yeah, I think once they determined that the DNA was from Koli McCraney, and he had the incident back in the military, and where he was living, and there's no known relationship. He denies a relationship with J.B. Beasley. I think at that point the indictment was inevitable at that point.
Yeah, I think that after 20 years, they weren't going to let the first strongest DNA-linked suspect get away without going through some kind of court process. So in my mind, the indictments, they don't surprise me at all. I thought this was coming.
Yeah, I don't think I'm too surprised by it as well. But there was another little wrinkle that happened right before the grand jury information came out. Another article from Dothan Eagle. Judge Stanley Garner Jr. issued an order Wednesday, June 5th, denying the defense attorney's request to strike Exhibit 4. Exhibit 4 is an incident complaint report from the security police at Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi dated April 11th, 1994. So that's the report you're talking about, Gray. That's pretty much the only history that we have that is showing us Koli might be the type of person to do something of a violent nature, I guess you could say. Pretty interesting that his legal team was trying to strike that literally the day before the grand jury met. On top of that, some new legal documents have become publicly available because of all this. We're going to be covering those details in upcoming episodes. One of them is this report, so we will do a deeper dive into that in a later episode. On top of that, we also have finally read the autopsy reports for ourselves as well. Stay tuned. We've got much more coming on that.
Yeah, we're going to be doing our final Season 1 live stream on July 31st, which is J.B. Beasley's birthday, and the same night that 20 years ago, J.B. and Tracie's lives were senselessly taken. Please join us on the conversation by searching for Gray Hughes Investigates on YouTube. And be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so that you don't miss it. Because if you don't hit that button, you will not get notified.
Absolutely. You can also find video versions of our podcast at my YouTube channel, Lord and Arts. And since we're intentionally trying to raise exposure using each of our platforms, remember, you can find all the information and links you need for any specific episode together all in one place at www.threemenandamystery.com. That's with the number 3. You will also find contact info there for local law enforcement and both legal teams. So if you have information to help shine the light of truth on this case, please send that to the appropriate party.
And if you have any feedback, corrections, or new details, they can be sent to us via email at 3men@3menandamystery.com, or you can reach out to us on Twitter with the handle @3menandamystery, or find us on Facebook. And if you're looking for another true crime podcast to listen to while you're waiting for the next episode of 3 Men and a Mystery, consider Moms and Murder. Here's a sample of it.
Hey guys, it's Melissa
and Mandy
with the Moms and Murder podcast. We're a true crime podcast that's sure to make you laugh without compromising the seriousness of the content.
Despite our name, we aren't just for the moms. Our show is for all the Diet Coke drinking, chicken loving, Dateline watching people in your life. Come for the murder and stay for the witty humor and pop culture references.
And you never know, you may even hear from some of your favorite names in the world of true crime, like Dateline's Josh Mankiewicz.
Do you have a preference on what we call you? Josh, Mankiewicz, Manx, Sir Manx a lot?
I don't hear Sir Manx a lot quite as often as
I can make it happen for you.
Broken Homicide's Derek Levasseur.
Are you tearing up on me? I saw you like...
So beautiful, everything you're saying.
Or even America's sweetheart, Allie Sweeney.
The neighbors suggested that perhaps Kathleen had been attacked by an owl.
The owl theory that Melissa and Allie Sweeney believe.
Again, so judgy.
Check out Moms and Murder anywhere podcasts are found.
3 Men and a Mystery is produced by John Lorden, Mike Morford, and Gray Hughes.
Please rate us on the podcasting platform that you found us on, and help us grow by telling your friends and family about us.
We hope you'll join us on the next episode, where we'll have a very special guest interview. One of the people that we mentioned in the tweets today, Andrew Scarborough, one of the defense attorneys for Coley McCraney, will be right here on 3 Men and a Mystery. I'm John Lorden.
This is Morph.
And this is Gray.
And we are 3 Men and a Mystery.